What comes to mind when you think of the word geometry? If you are like me, you probably don't associate geometry with unique, interesting art. But that's what this module is all about. We're going to explore the math of symmetrical shapes by using repeating patterns called tessellation. A tessellation is created when one or more geometric shapes are repeated over and over again. The shapes fit into each other so that they fill a surface without any gaps or overlaps. Tessellations rely on symmetry to form their repeated patterns. But what is symmetry? Hey, that's a great question to ask your students. Gather a bunch of answers. Don't judge them right away or say whether or not an answer is right or wrong. Just see what your students know about symmetry already. If they can't articulate what they're thinking, see if they can show you. Then, hold up a triangle and ask, what do you think it means that this triangle is symmetrical? At the end of the discussion, explain or reiterate that symmetry is when one side of a shape exactly mirrors the other, like this triangle. Next, you'll draw or print out a triangle or square shape. Make sure you use a symmetrical one. You can find some templates on the Explorer website. Color half the shapes in one color and half the shapes in another color. Use this as your template and make a lot of copies. Each student should have plenty to work with. First, you're going to create an example. Cut out several of the shapes. Starting in the center of your piece of paper, glue down a shape. Then add another shape, leaving no spaces in between. But this shape should be in the other color. Continue adding shapes in alternating colors until the whole paper is covered. Show your students your example. Then ask open-ended questions such as, what do you notice about this? Is this art? What's special about this symmetrical pattern? If you had a bigger piece of paper, could you continue this pattern? Could it go on forever? What if you arrange the shapes differently? Tell your students that these types of symmetrical patterns that can go on forever are called tessellations. Reiterate that triangles or squares are symmetrical and tessellations are symmetrical patterns. Then, have your students make their own tessellations using the shapes. Depending on the age of your students, you can either have them cut out the shapes or you can have the shapes cut out for them ahead of time. Have the students share their work with each other. Notice the different ways the shapes were arranged to create each tessellation. There are actually names for the different ways shapes can be arranged with respect to one another. There are translation, reflection, and rotation. The more familiar your students can become with these different arrangements, the more creative they can get with their tessellations. Can you create a tessellation that combines all three of these patterns? Have each student think about which arrangement technique, reflection, translation, or rotation, they would like to use for their first row. Then the students can place the shape or figure to tessellate on a sheet of paper and trace it. Slide the shape over and line it up with the first shape so there are no gaps or overlaps, and then trace it again. The students will continue their chosen technique until the row is finished. Try another transformation technique on the next row. Can you create a tessellation using more than one kind of shape? What kind of shapes can be tessellated? Use art supplies to add color to your tessellation art. To extend this activity, challenge students to draw their own shape to tessellate.
Changing the equation. After-school math curriculum brought to you by Explorer. Funding provided by Sandia National Laboratories. Find more Changing the Equation videos at explora.us/changing-the-equation.